Okay, great. I will gavel in November's Ways and Means Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Here.
Alderman Gould.
Here.
Alderwoman Tice.
Here.
Alderman Erger.
Here.
Present.
Great. Item 2 on the agenda is approval or amendment of the agenda. Does anyone have any objections, additions? Any objection to letting that stand by acclamation? All right, it'll be so approved. Item number 3 is a report of the committee chair and alderman. I have no report. Alderman Gould?
No report.
Alderwoman Tice?
No report?
Alderman Erger?
No report.
Item 4 on the agenda is city administrator report.
I'll take this one. In board docs, there is a memo in regards to cash flow and the current cash flow status within the city. I've requested from the city administrator to be able to liquidate the top 5 investments in the investment tier that Brad with Arbitrage Management keeps with the city. And the memo outlines the level of outflows that we've had in 2024 and the pending inflows that were due to sort of offset some of those spending patterns. They were expected, some of them, to come back in reimbursements in 2025 and 2024, and now it appears as if they'll come closer to 2025. So in order to meet some of the cash flow needs, we're just sort of updating the board and letting you guys be fully aware with it. We're going to liquidate some of these items, and then once sort of all the cash comes back in and we're back in a little bit of a better status, we'll do reinvestment for such items. Any immediate questions on? We did do some big things in 2024 based upon the outflows, so.
And this is just for information purposes only. You're not needing any motion or anything from us. Anyone? All right, unseen. Any questions? Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is department report. 5A is financial statements.
That's me as well. And there are the September financial statements. And as September sort of wrapped up, there weren't really very many highs or lows. Everything sort of stayed in line. Revenues for occupational license had exceeded. Building permits also exceeded. And the plumbing permits sort of were some of the superstars for September. Interest for investment income was over $300,000. By the end of October, we're at over $400,000. So that seems to still be doing really well as far as revenues are concerned. Any immediate questions on revenues while we're looking at those?
Just a question on the weed cutting and cleanup. It just strikes me as odd as our adopted budget was only 500, but clearly prior years has. Why were we so off on our
I don't know that Whitney is
budget?
necessary, and I don't know that we were necessarily off. Some of the weed cutting and cleanup also was some of the larger issuances for cleanup of the apartment, or we had a couple of facilities that needed to be cleaned up and were larger bills, $3,000 and $4,000.
Then we put a lien on those properties and expect them to pay it back to the city ultimately.
But as we look at budgeting for this year, I mean, the prior year seemed like we had relatively high numbers as well. Do we?
We're also, we've been talking to Mayor Dimmitt a little bit about this because he's heard from residents. There's this belief that maybe the costs are a little high. So for the third party that helps us address these code violation issues throughout the city. So in 2025, we will be issuing an RFP and going out for a new provider, possibly for that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on revenues?
Not seeing any.
Expenditures, once again, September, most things are in line. By October, which we just wrapped up reconciling October, so for the next meeting, we'll have our October statements, and those will actually include all of the retro and the compensation study full impact starting October and on. One of the things to note in the September statements, on page 3, miscellaneous expense for the municipal operations, it runs about $381,000. That is part of the expenses to close out the TIFs. We're waiting on St. Louis County to reimburse us our portion of those dollars and continue to work with them. By October, you will see that will also hold the $1.4 million that we submitted to St. Louis County. So that will reflect in September, and you'll start to see September sort of change the fabric of this a little bit. So otherwise, there aren't any real big highs or lows for September either. Are there any immediate questions?
Not seeing any.
Perfect, thank you.
All right, moving on, item 6 on the agenda is old business. 6A, we have continued proposed budget presentations. And who is leading off on that one?
So the first item is security for City Hall. This, Chief? So Chief Spees presented this at the Public Safety Committee, and I believe that the recommendation was for the interior door. You want to take it?
Good evening. Coming out of Public Safety, as they reviewed our recommendation from the Police Department and from Dan Gummershammer's shop, we had discussions about securing this rear door behind you and doing a metal detector at the front and adding an additional officer because we need 2 at the metal detector on the entrance. There was discussion about whether or not the board wanted to do protective Kevlar material at your base. Kind of waiting on a decision from you guys in terms of what direction to take on that. You see the cost of what the interior door, the metal detector, and there's also a cost of the overtime for the officers included in this. As you see it on your, those are estimates for the 4 to 5 days. So it's not, unless Dan went out and got a bid, which I don't believe we have an accurate bid at this point, but that's I would call that a ballpark figure. I think the moving number on that, the installation of the Kevlar in this area is the installation cost. It's going to be the labor of cutting it and then and somehow attaching it to the base. Questions?
Alderman Gould?
So the Public Safety Committee, though, their recommendation was just to move forward with the door. Is that right? I thought
believe
that.
they wanted to do the metal detector in the door. Is that
Oh, they
correct?
did?
That's correct, yeah.
I thought when I watched it, I thought it was only the door. Okay. But the metal detector then, if we approve the metal detector, that builds in that we also have to have the extra overtime built into it as well.
Dollars. If 9,000 is the cost for overtime.
It would only be active for the full board meetings. Is that what we're proposing? That so all other meetings, it's inactive. Where does it? Is it a permanent build into the?
No, they're mobile, so we can move them.
And where are we gonna? Where would we store it? Where I mean, how would we work out the operations of that? I mean, it seems like a pretty big item to be just sort of moving around all the time for, what do we say, 21 meetings?
I would anticipate that we'd leave it or store it somewhere in the front part of this building so that we could just wheel it there during the meetings. I think that's a logistic we could probably figure out fairly easy.
Is that something that would also be used when we have court?
Potentially,
Or
yes.
is that another?
Yeah,
is
right now
that
we're
another
using the wanding process,
flagpole?
so.
So there would be greater usage, and police officers are here anyway for that.
Yes, ma'am.
So did we not, I guess I feel like I'm on public safety. Did we not discuss wanding for the Board of Alderman meetings, especially given often how few people actually come to our riveting meetings?
Yes, we did discuss that, and potentially we could do that. We do that for courts right now. So rather than spend the money on the actual metal detector piece, we could stay with the wanding, but also require 2 officers to do the wanding. If you're going to have a problem, that's where your problem's going to be. If somebody comes in. So from an officer safety perspective, we would need 2 policemen there if you're going to do a wanding process.
So it
So
doesn't save
you're
us on
stuck
this.
with the.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that the metal detector is more effective than the wanding process, but it does make it easier. It makes it quicker. But to your point, we don't get that. It's not that heavily attended either, so.
So are there typically 3 officers here on court night?
No, 2.
2. Okay, so they're are they only at the door, or how does it work on court night?
On court night, there's two of them there as they wand, as folks come in, yes.
They wand right in the lobby, right here.
Oh, when they get here?
Yes.
Okay, so that's not a system we could use for the board to have them?
You could, yes.
And then
but
remain
it would
with
probably be better down at the entrance down here at the front, rather than, they're doing it right here as the people come into court.
I'm just trying to think of like a staff solution. It seems a long-term commitment to ongoing staffing.
You talking about it for our board meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, we're able to put, people in here. Usually, we have one on-duty officer and one working some version of overtime, so it's a matter of getting them in here and paying them, so.
Aren't there 2 officers anyway, if they're here? I've only, observationally, it seems like they're.
Yeah, so the logistics of it, though, if you think your way through it, people come in here late. We'd have to leave the wanders down at the door. And we definitely want an officer here up front with you guys. So that's the cause, the need for 3. So that's where it's at.
Would hate to have them roll tape at this meeting.
Well,
God forbid something were to happen.
and I just received a text from Alderman Lockmuller, who was on the Public Safety Committee. He said that the motion was from Public Safety to only outfit the door, so not to include the metal detector. I mean, seems to me to be that, seems like that might be an issue that is not a bad thing to do, just because of the challenges of having to either lock that always or have it propped open, which is not safe to have it open. So, I mean, I would be, if we were going to approve anything, I would say we should approve the interior door. But I have a hard time with all of the other ones. Of course, I don't want to be foolish and say, oh, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know if there would ever be a problem. But it seems excessive when we barely have anybody show up. We have a lot of people attend or watch via Zoom, unless we usually will know if there's going to be a topic that is going to have a lot of attendance, so.
If I could interrupt you just for a second, on that note, if we do have a meeting that you think is going to be contentious, we could, at that point, go wanding. And I don't know that you want to make that adjustment, but the police department can certainly do it for you if you want us to. In other words, on a meeting where you might have something contentious, we could staff that with 3 officers and wand at the front door. I don't know that you want to change your policy, so from meeting to meeting, that's up to you, but we can do that too.
From a point, or policy standpoint, are there issues with being selective about what meetings we wand and what meetings we don't?
I mean,
That
I
that
can
could
ask
be
the city
just
attorney, but I
like,
don't,
oh,
I
you
can't
want,
imagine.
I wanted to talk about, my setback, and that's when you decided to wand the meeting to intimidate me. You're being arbitrary, Brentwood.
Sure, that statement can be made. I mean, and I think they have a right to say it. But, it's your meeting, and I think in consultation with the police department, it's a decision that you all are free to make at any given meeting.
I mean, I'm inclined to, I think I agree with Alderman Gould. I mean, we could certainly grow into the complexity if we decided that we wanted to have wanding. I guess I'd be curious to know if what are the issues with, having the discretion to sometimes wand a meeting and sometimes not.
We do have, it's not as if we're playing this cheap. We have 2 police officers here with you. And myself and Jason or Angie are typically here as well. So there's really 3 or 4 cops sitting here with you. So it's not as if you're unprotected. This is just a security upgrade that's being considered. We can work with whatever you guys decide on this.
This in addition, since I wasn't at public safety, would this be in addition to the budget, or is this already so?
Dan, and if this is something that Ways and Means and the board wants to do, there are funds that it can be done this year. Such a minimal cost. The door, yes. No, at all.
I'll make a motion to approve the cost of the interior door as a capital improvement fund to be funded by savings this year in fiscal 2024.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion by Alderman Gould and a second by Alderwoman Tice. Any so roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Erker.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Next item would be the dedicated traffic officer vehicle.
Yes, ma'am. So this is an ongoing discussion that I think all of you have heard this already at least once. So the police department has asked for a vehicle to support our efforts for traffic. To reiterate our position on this, we have given you examples of either a gas-powered car or an electric vehicle. We honestly don't have an opinion on one way or the other on it. We would like to have the car to do this program so that we can support that traffic enforcement piece. I've told you in prior meetings that we struggle with the number of cars we have, and sometimes there's days when we simply don't have a car available for doing things like this. So that asset forfeiture expenditure seems to make sense to me. I think it's a good use of that money that is only for the police department and for law enforcement use. So that was the decision that we made to bring forward to you. You look at this list, and I did want to point out that, because I had it too, you get sticker shock when you look at the cost of this stuff. The big sticker shock is what it costs to equip this car. And keeping in mind that this would be an extra car in our fleet, typically what we do is roll out all the gear into a new car. So you save that outfitting cost. So the cost of a new rifle, a new computer for the car, the in-car camera system, the mobile ticketing system, and I can keep talking. It's in the list of things you see here. They're expensive items. So, but again, this is an asset forfeiture spend that the government approves for those purchases. So putting the car together is over $100,000. It's expensive. And that's either the Tahoe model or the electric vehicle model. So if you guys approve the idea of buying the car, which car we purchase, we frankly don't care. We're just looking for some direction from you on what you guys think is best. When you look at the use of this car would be 8 hours a day, 5 days a week in theory. So this is not one of those hard-driven, cars that's going to be really stressed like we do to our gas-powered Tahoes and Durangos. So with that in mind, we are interested to see how an electric vehicle would hold up and whether it would hold up longer. In theory, I guess it would. So I think it's a fun way to dip our toe into the electric vehicle pool. That's just my take on it, though, and we're obviously open to whatever you guys suggest.
Alderman Tice.
Because I don't ask enough questions on my own at these meetings. Alderman Gould texted me some questions. I mean, sorry, not Gould, sorry, Alderman Waggy. So his first question is that the Blazer comes from GM as a PPV, I guess. And he wondered if that negated any of the outfitting or if that.
So it does come with a cage in the back, so they outfit it with spotlight and stuff like that. But the gear that you're seeing listed in this memo is not included because it's specific to the department. So like the computer, for example. GM's not outfitting the car with the computer or things that are specific to your department.
Okay, and then he wondered why there was a need for an AR-15 in a car that was going to do traffic tickets.
I would always want a police officer with that rifle. You never know what they're going to respond to.
Okay. And then his last question is that there's a $7,500 federal rebate that he said, I guess you've looked into it. He thought that in the Ameren report that Eric's group did, that there was a way for the city to take advantage of that. I don't know if Eric is here, if he.
I can do further research, but I can tell you, I talked to the manufacturer's rep, and he said it does not apply to law enforcement. But I can
Oh,
double check.
okay.
Yeah, I can double check.
Because he thought it applied to like the city could get around it, so I,
They're not giving them on the police cars, is what I was told, but I can double check.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, those were his comments. And then, I guess with my hat, so how have you been, how has, like, we've had this officer sort of looking at doing ticket writing for a while.
Yes, ma'am.
And you mentioned the other day, the last meeting, that you didn't have enough cars for the people there. How often does that happen, that there aren't enough?
Regularly.
Okay.
Yeah, right now we've got 2 down still. They've been down for quite a while. The cars we got on the grant, we've had one being outfitted for, I think, almost 2 months now. So it's just a shuffle. It's a juggle every day to try and keep the cars in service as they get older and they need more maintenance and they get downed. And it's day watch. That's when we really struggle. Night watch, we don't struggle because the detectives are all, not there and whatever. But when the SRO, Monday through Friday, the SRO is there at school every day, and then you got the parks guys taking a car now. So that's why we struggle getting these cars available.
So I'll make, since we're having discussion, I'll move it forward. So I'll make a motion that we approve funds from asset forfeiture for this car, but then that we also set aside an amount from asset forfeiture to replace this car in the future, so that this car will be replaced through asset forfeiture funds and not in the vehicle replacement policy.
And just to clarify that, if you could, that would be the cost of the car in theory.
And the outfitting, the cost of
Well,
the,
the equipment's gonna still be there in 5, 6, 7, 8 years, hopefully.
yeah.
And some of it could be outdated, the computer, but then likely would be outdated, actually. But the rifle's a 10-year warranty and things like that usually stick around. So.
Right, so I guess I don't know what amount to set aside, because I don't quite know how much is set aside in the vehicle replacement policy, but I'd like the amount that we would set aside in the vehicle replacement policy to be set aside with asset forfeiture money, sort of tying up that amount of money in that pot of funds.
Understood.
Very long one.
I'll second it.
Okay, well, we've got a motion by Alderwoman Tice and a second by Alderman Gould.
I have a question, though.
Okay.
Okay. So, I mean, I'm fine, again, asset forfeiture is a pocket of money that isn't taxpayer money. It's, it's your own kind of fund that you have, and I think if that's what you want to spend money for, I would be concerned if this motion means it has to be an EV, only because of what if you can't purchase the EV, or there's some production problem, and then.
And that happened, not to interrupt you, but that happened last year to all the departments that ordered this car. They shut it down after the orders were made, so that could happen. So if you can give us the autonomy to switch if we need to.
That's all I'm saying is the motion, the
Well,
flexibility.
I don't think the motion included
I didn't,
just the
No,
determination.
I didn't
that's what I
include the
wanted to-
determination
I was
of
just
R. I can
clarifying
add
your-
it, I
I
can
was
add it, but I was trying to keep it as, I was trying
Yeah,
to
I mean,
focus on the
Just
replacement
clarifying your
part.
intent with the motion, that's
No,
all.
my intent was the replacement, to get through
Yes,
that, and
yes.
then,
Yeah, I mean,
Let's see if that-
it's your
if we-
motion, Alderwoman Tice, but I didn't hear in the motion that you were picking a type of car. I mean, it would seem to me that's something that would be the topic of further discussion in public safety and, in the year to come.
And I heard that too, I just wanted to clarify that.
no, I
that's
was
what
not,
that-
I was,
yeah.
yes, I was.
That's all I was clarifying,
Yes.
is that, okay.
All right, are there other questions? I'm not seeing any. Okay, roll call.
Chairwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes,
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Erker. Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Okay, and looks like the next item, item 3 on this portion, would be the take-home vehicle for the 2 lieutenant positions.
Yes, ma'am. We asked, just to recapitulate this quickly, last year we asked the city administrator, and she approved it for the 2 lieutenants' positions, and as part of that, because of that, detailed responsibility of those officers having to respond off-duty and carry a phone 24/7 and other reasons, was authorized for take-home cars. She asked that we bring this to you as the elected officials to amend the handbook, because in the handbook it says majors and the chief of police are authorized to take-home cars. So an adjustment to the handbook is being requested to say commanders. As you know, our lieutenants also wear white shirts and are considered command rank officers at this point in our department as well. So the request is to make really a one-line adjustment to the handbook that puts the lieutenants in that same category as commanders.
Alderwoman Tice?
A lot is being dumped on us at budget time. So, and it does appear that next year we're going to look at the vehicle replacement policy, and we talked about this last time, and I know Public Safety talked about it. So I would like to make a motion that the 2 lieutenants' positions can keep the current cars that are in use now, but that we not put them in, not change the vehicle replacement policy or put these vehicles in the vehicle replacement policy. And we can look at that next year when we look at the vehicle replacement policy.
If I could just briefly comment on that. We're rolling the majors and my cars into these cars. So they're not patrol cars that are really hard, cars that are driven hard, and they're lasting longer because of that. The car that I got rid of had, I think, almost 130,000 miles on it when I got rid of my first police car here. So they tend to last longer because of it. Jim McIntyre's car is still here with us. So my point to you is that the city's replacement, and as Dan's group looks at replacing police cars, it's a different conversation of the command cars than it would be a marked patrol car that's being driven hard. So.
Right. And I'm just trying to grasp this vehicle replacement policy because it's sort of new to us.
Right.
But I know that next year, I think the budget will be a little bit more in-depth on that. But we just, like, if we add vehicles and we're putting money aside to replace vehicles, then at some point, there's not money left in the pot for things that aren't in capital replacement, like paving streets or doing sidewalks. And I would like us to have an opportunity to get into next year and analyze this and sort of see where we are so that we're not strapping the city into just only replacing vehicles and we can't do anything else. So that's my reasoning.
Yeah, I mean, I concur with that, and I also am concerned, we've got several new cars that, you know, are going to be coming online, and we're now all of a sudden, instead of having things staggered, we've got a lot of cars that are going to be in a very similar life cycle. So somehow we're going to have to figure out how to extend life out of some of them so that we're not, you know, having this huge balloon payment every, you know, at the same time, every time.
Well, on that note, the 2 cars that we got this year from the grant, we're holding. So because of that, we were trying to, these are marked cars that are going into the fleet for hard service. But I've instructed the majors to hold those cars back as long as we can for that reason. The longer we can give them their life, the longer that that cycle that you're talking about doesn't hit us all at the same time.
Alderwoman Tice, just so I understand it, is that the result of your motion would be that the lieutenants drive their cars at home, retain their vehicles, but that whether we formally update our policy is going to be something that we tackle when we more comprehensively review our vehicles.
Exactly.
Ask a question.
Sure.
So should we also be working toward amending the take-home policy as it stands now to include the 2 lieutenants?
Well, I mean, I'm going to
Or
go back
wait
to,
until then?
well, I would like to wait until then.
Okay.
I mean, I'm going to go back to the question I ask for every single thing that comes before us, which is, well, what do the other municipalities do? And how many take-home vehicles do the different police departments have? And you know, and when we look at those vehicles, it's not just police, it's you know, the parks and all the vehicles. What do our neighbors do? And really look at the policy and make sure that ours is consistent with what others do.
Thank you.
Are there other questions?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the comment I have about it is, I mean, right now, the Public Safety Committee recommended that this is something they think is a reasonable thing to do. I think our role as a committee is whether or not it impacts the budget negatively or we can afford it. And as long as I'm hearing that this is, we are going to sell one of the vehicles that we have, right? Hopefully we get good money for that. But I think as we continue to look, right now, it seems like it'd be an okay, we have the vehicles, it seems like it'd be okay. But I do think as we start to look at the replacement policy, we may have to make some adjustments next year. So it's sort of public safety seems like it's a good idea. Let's start to implement it, see how it goes. Again, see how often they really need it at home. I mean, if they, well, then maybe it becomes, yeah. Okay. So that's a reason I'm supportive of your motion, because I think that we need to kind of test this out, see how it goes.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, not seeing any. Roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Erger.
Yes.
Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Okay, thank you, Chief. I think we got forestry coming up next, so you're off the hot seat. The next item on this part is forestry expense, impact on general fund versus stormwater and parks fund in capital projects in fiscal year 25 and beyond.
Very slow. So I'm going to take both Brentwood Days and forestry up in the same presentation. So obviously we were asked to look at these things. I think I passed out both times. Bola brought me back to life and reminded me I had to do this. So just bear with me. I'll start with Brentwood Days. I don't need to go through what Brentwood Days is, but I do want to say it is really a collaborative event with all the city departments. While we take care of entertainment and the activities, which is the most frontward-forward stuff, and also because of our event planning expertise, I'm the one who usually talks about it in meetings. But every department in the city does work on this event. So administration and planning does the parade. The fire department provides first aid and handles logistics. They also put together plans for the event. They also put together all the first aid equipment needed for the event. Police obviously handles safety and also logistics. And then Public Works does actually all the event operations. So they're the ones ordering the tents, ordering the golf carts, the fencing, things like that. So while I am on the face of it, unfortunately, it is a city event. So that's kind of why it has been in the general fund up to now. So. And again, for regular park maintenance, again, I kind of talked to this to Alderwoman Tice a little bit. I can't remember if it was in public or not, or at the meeting or not, but just a brief history on park maintenance. In 2008, park maintenance was actually transferred from Parks and Recreation to Public Works for a variety of reasons I can't really go into because I wasn't here, Bola wasn't here. But part of that transfer was also moving the revenue for Parks and Recreation fees and charges, because the general fund was now doing the work of the Parks and Recreation Department. So that's why fees and charges were moved from Fund 50 at Fund 10 at that time. And then back in 2016, we took it back. Again, lots of reasons why. I won't go into all this now. But also for other reasons, we took on some additional stuff that typically is handled by Public Works. We took over the Gateway Fountain, which is not a park, and I would love to give that back to Public Works, but we maintain it, and at the time we had a staff person who did it, so it kind of made sense at the time. And we also do all the landscaping at city-owned facilities, so all the stuff at the police department, fire department, that's taken care of by our horticulturist staff, which ironically is done by Public Works in most other cities. And then again, some different right-of-ways like cul-de-sacs and coves. So again, I think Bola will tell you I probably pushed a little back at that at the time, but she wanted me to be a team player. Happily, it was a team player at the time. And part of that was the knowledge of we were moving fees and charges back from Fund 10 into Fund 50 for all those expenditures that we picked up. Then street trees, kind of very similar. Again, prior to 2016, street trees were maintained by Public Works. They had an ISA certified arborist in their department. That employee allowed his certification to lapse, and to be completely honest, there's other reasons why we wanted to move it into the Parks and Recreation Department. One of them was we had just hired a park superintendent who was ISA certified. So again, we just wanted to make sure that the urban forest was being maintained by someone who had a specialty and expertise in it. We also, once that moved, we hired an urban forester. He or she is the one who kind of go around and make sure every tree looks all right. They do the analysis of the trees every year. They're the ones who are really working with Davey Tree, who is our contractor, does most of it, to kind of support all that efforts. And then finally, the funding sources, we talked about it for a while, but the general fund covered all the expenses related just to the street trees. Again, stuff that was Public Works, that felt like it should be paid for by the general fund, even though we were maintaining it. And then we took over the expenses related to park trees, which we already had done, so that wasn't anything new. The only thing new was kind of carrying any associated staff costs. So the urban forester was a new position. We actually, at the time, reclassified a different position into the urban forester, removed. It's like a secretary position, so we reclassified for that. So those are the reasons why we did everything. So you guys asked what the implication would be. So it's anywhere from 200 to 300,000 up to 400,000 a year. We talked about the reason why is primarily in the general fund or in the forestry fund is because it is determined by the ward that we do the preventive maintenance on. So Ward 1 has a lot of trees. Ward 4 has the least amount of trees. So I think this year you'll see the least amount in forestry 25 because we are doing Ward 4 this year. Next year, because Ward 1 has lots of trees. Ultimately, we'd like to even that out because what that means is that we have some vacant spots we can put more trees in. Residents do like trees, and we're happy about that. The only one that's never going to be quite as much is always going to be Ward 4 because it is primarily just the right of way within Ward 4, and Brentwood Forest handles all the other trees are within their property, so it is always. And so Brentwood Days is about $100,000, $110,000. We see it increase year after year. So that's where we get those both. So ultimately what happens is the general fund, you increase your net surplus in 25, 26, and 27, about $200,000 to $400,000 a year. You're going to lose this in a second. Maybe. Until it does. And the stormwater is we go from a net surplus to that's where we lost it. Sorry, our dangle just broke on us. It says preparing the meeting room. It says cannot connect to the meeting room. Let's try this.
This presentation is also in board docs. Fresh.
But ultimately, I'll try to do both as we talk. If let me know when you guys are on the presentation, and then I'll start again. Stay unable to connect to meeting room. Reason we cannot connect. All right, instead of making you guys wait, you guys all have it at this point. Sorry. So we go to a negative net surplus in Fund 50. And there's lots of reasons why, which we'll kind of talk about, I think, a little bit in the next page. But ultimately, how do you make up that negative net surplus? And because we can't bring you a negative fund balance, so the easiest way to do it is capital. So the Parks and Recreation Department our capital is contained within Fund 50, so it is all within there. So ultimately, what we do on a yearly basis is while we have a capital plan, we also look at all of our revenues and expenditures for that year, and then we plug in all of our operational expenditures, and whatever's left over is kind of our capital. And that's kind of been how we've been working for the last number of years. So going on to the next slide. But what we've seen for the last few years is a reduction of about 42% in our capital expenditures availability. And it's related to three main things. The first is the increase in operational budget for Brentwood Bound. We talked about this a lot during the planning portion of Brentwood Bound. So that's covering the extra salaries, the contractual and expenditure and commodities related to the increase for Brentwood Bound. So that's the big chunk of it. The salary benefit increase following the compensation study. The good news is most of that, almost 80% of that, is covered by the transfer to the EDST. So we thank you for that. But that does leave a little bit, about $100,000 still that took away from capital expenditures. And then lastly, what we've been talking about for a few years and talked about was making sure that we have this Brentwood Park Maintenance Improvement Liquidity Fund. And so we've started putting money aside to make sure that we have that in the future. So again, that is going to be, those expenditures are going to be large when they come through, and we want to make sure that we start building now so we have that ready to go. And so what that does is we see the available capital funding for the next 3 years. It drops 25 down to 593,000. Some of that additional funding that you see over 26 and 27 is that we do have grants for this year for the Brentwood Wetland Arboretum, and that's the big one. That's where most of our grant funding is for this year. And it's almost 300,000 in 26, and then in 27 it's under 200,000. So that would be our capital expenditures for the next couple of years. And it'd be pretty similar with that year after year, unless there's additional revenue that comes in, things like that. And so what does that mean? We would have to figure out what to do with our capital plan. I try to look at it very quickly, and it's when you're looking at those low numbers, really I can't just say we're going to move the Brentwood Park parking lot. We'd have to. Obviously, we'd have to cut that from the budget, and I don't know where we'd be able to put that back in because we'd have to figure that year over year. For next year, we have to do a couple things. We have IT expenditures every year, much like that you see in the general fund. Those are contained within the capital program in the Parks and Recreation Department. So that's anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 a year, depending on what's going on in IT. We'd have to do the work on the Wetland Arboretum because that is, again, a grant-funded project that we're also getting revenue for. And then we'd also have to do next year specifically the Olympia replacement because we put in the down payment last year. So we'd have to continue that or we'd lose our money on the Olympia, what we've already paid. And so we wouldn't want to do that. And so that's most of next year. And then after that, you look at 26. The big project in 26 is the Hanley Park bathroom and also the parking lot. We kind of split that up over 2 years because even with our new capital program, we really can't do a big project. So what we try to do is spread those 2 years. It works out well for Parks and Recreation because you want to do projects in the wintertime anyway. So October to March, it's a good time. We can split 2 fiscal years too. And that's how we've kind of done bigger capital projects anyway. So that's what we'll be doing in the future. But if we go down to this, we'd have to rearrange and look at that. So that would have to go away. And then we'd have to look at 27 and everything kind of readjust. Now, it can be done. That is what my job is. And so that's what we'd have to do if that's what we did. I just don't have an answer for you right today. I'd have it ready to go by the next meeting if we have another meeting, or by the board meeting if it gets moved on to the board, because that's what I'd have to do. And so looking at just a little thing is, lastly, is the master plan. We just approved the master plan in Monday. And if you looked in the master plan, it's categorized in, they did expenditures. They did estimated expenditures, which is categorized in 5 different categories. So under 1 is under $50,000, all the way up to number 5, which is $600,000. So they didn't give us a dollar amount for each project, but they kind of did these estimates by those categories. And so what I did in each of these parks was basically take the midpoint. So category 1, I took $25,000. Category 2, $100,000, so on and so forth. And then on number 5, I just left that $600,000 because we don't know what that cost is going to be. So that just lists kind of the capital expenditures are by park according to the master plan. There are some smaller items. Obviously, McKnight Park is lower price. Oak Tree Park, we've done a lot of work in there already. Hanley Industrial. But again, if you look at what we're going to do in our capital plan, Hanley Industrial probably won't rate very high to begin with because no one knows it's a park. It's not, no one's clamoring for a park there anyway, amenities at that location. So we'd want to do everything else first. So as we talked about in a couple meetings ago, what we'll do now that the master plan has been approved is redo our capital improvement plan completely and kind of really start that CIP again, making sure that we kind of rank each project and see where we're at with those things. So ultimately, when you look at those type of projects, if you get to a bigger project, a pavilion, a bathroom, things like that, what we need to do is, honestly, we'd have to kind of bank money for a few years. So if we're at that 200,000, we'd have to do that 2 or 3 years, not do any capital, and then have that money kind of banked up in reserve so that we can do that project. So ultimately, that's the path moving forward if we make that move. So that is the basics of everything. I'm sure there's questions. I'm happy to answer them. And at that point, I'm sure the presentation will come back on. Actually, when I took it out, so it can't.
Well, I'll start because I think I probably shortened the years of your life or the days of your
it's
life by
fine,
this
it's fine.
request. So I did not mean to purposely do
Oh.
that. So thank you for this. Thank you for some of the history that came along with why funds were transferred back and forth. I'm not going to make any motions to change how the budget is currently done. Certainly having listened to this, I would like to just sort of get out into the discussion that, we made a really big commitment to our employees with this salary study. And I'm not saying that, I think, the strong budget, we have money coming in, there's nothing to worry about. But there could be a time when funds from programming in parks could potentially need to be shifted to Fund 10, General Fund.
Sure.
And that that just needs to be out as something that can be done. Obviously, Parks and Stormwater tax is a very different thing, and that Parks and Stormwater tax is for Parks and Stormwater. But I would just sort of like to have that out in the public so that all of us know and we're aware that that could be an option in the future. But I appreciate the thorough work and enjoyed learning the history of some of how things have come and gone from departments over the years.
Other questions or comments?
I just have one question as it relates to the Brentwood Park Maintenance and Improvement Liquidity Fund. Now, was that specific to Brentwood Park or Brentwood Parks?
That is specific to Brentwood Park.
Okay.
And that's the idea, is making sure that
The equipment, the,
funding is there for, I mean, not only just equipment, we're gonna have to dredge the lake every 5 to 10 years. We're gonna have to do work, I mean, the trails going down the pathway will need to work, and so there's gonna be, improvements. You hope it's 5 to 10 years, and you can build that fund now, and that way you can start investing it and making some money off of interest. And if it's done right, hopefully that's all you use, is you interest, and you keep that base capital line in there forever, hopefully. So, but like anything else, you have to build that base pretty quickly.
and some of the wear and tear that we saw this summer for the playground equipment and all that stuff, do we anticipate that's going to be an annual thing, keeping us from building this fund a little bit? Or?
No, because
Okay.
this is basically money that's going to be earmarked for it already. So it is part of my capital plan. So that money will be earmarked and will go. I won't be able to touch that money, anything, unless I come back and ask for a budget amendment, budget adjustment.
Thank you.
Questions on this topic? I'm not seeing any.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
Because we're trying to wrap up the budget. 2 meetings ago, we talked about moving the truck from a regular truck to an EV and replacing that with the parking lot project. Is that something we still want to do? And if so, I think we probably need a motion to move forward on that so that we can change the budget. Sorry. Yes. We have a truck in our department. We talked about whether it should be moved to cap or moved to an EV. And then we said the easy way to do that is take out the parking lot, the community center parking lot, the Community center parking lot, because that was
Oh,
only.
the research, the,
The $25,000
Yeah, the
$25,000 for the
$25,000
crack
to
sealing and
crack sealing, yep.
seal coating and striping.
Yep, and delay that.
that was in your budget next year. Could it still be sealed, or is not doing work to it gonna get it into a situation that then it's not worth sealing and we're looking at?
State of disrepair.
No, ultimately, I think we can probably sneak it one more year, you know, and ultimately, maybe two. It's not in terrible shape, but it is getting close where we want to make sure that we kind of seal it and keep the life a little bit longer on that thing. If you think about when we did the rec center, half of the parking lot was redone. So that front part by the community center is 10 years old. The back part is a little bit older. But, you know, that's the idea is if you drive by, you kind of still see the demarcation of the new versus the old. And ultimately, you know, it just is a nice upgrade. So I think it could go another year, possibly two, but I don't want to push it much past that.
So the additional cost to make, so you've got $35,000 for the park maintenance truck in there right now.
Yep.
The additional cost for to make it EV would be another $25,000
I think
roughly.
ultimately, I think the cost we got from the dealer was about 58,000. We talked about the plug-in. Actually, the truck we're talking about has a plug-in that comes with it, so we don't have that cost. And we can plug it in at the
Rec center?
at Public Works or at the rec center, either one. So I'm not too worried about that because we can use a 120.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hesitant to, one, I think, you know, I'd rather see things like the parking lot kept in good condition, because that's where a lot of our residents and people that visit, and I think that's just saying, okay, well, let's push it down another year potentially. I don't know what's the, other than the Ameren study, which, you know, I haven't actually seen the study, so what would be the reasoning for a truck, an EV truck for parks?
Ultimately, part of the sustainability plan is to try to move as many vehicles in the fleet, the city's fleet, from internal combustion to electric.
But why? Like, is that just because it would be cool to say we did, or?
Not just the carbon
is
output.
there?
The carbon output from a gas electric vehicle to gas combustion to gas, it's cleaner for the environment.
We're talking about one
vehicle
vehicle in
right.
in a city that,
Nope.
I mean, I just want to make sure if we're going to spend $25,000 more on a vehicle, we're doing it for a reason that makes good sense. And reducing carbon emissions for one vehicle is not for even a small city. Even if we completely outfitted every vehicle in the city, the impact on environment is nothing, is negligible, right? And that's fine. And so I think this is a bigger regional, state, federal conversation to have. But if there were evidence of you know, efficiencies and costs and maintenance and ability, you know, fuel costs, these vehicles are much heavier. So you're going to be going through tires and brakes more. Not brakes, sorry, tires. And then I don't know, are these used to be towing? Because we don't even know really
No,
the capacity.
This would be one of our normal work trucks. It'd be a F-150. So we wouldn't be towing anything with this. This would just be,
Hauling anything? I mean, like, are we hauling stuff with it, or?
I mean, mulch, stuff that would fit in the bed. But we wouldn't be taking it, you know, we wouldn't be hauling the bandwagon with it. We wouldn't be hauling anything really heavy. The biggest thing at most would be a trailer with the mowers on it. And ultimately, I mean, again, I bring it up because it was a conversation we had during my presentation, so I wanted to make sure I had the proper direction. But I think, you know, what sustainability, anyone in the Sustainability Commission will tell you is like, yes, one doesn't make a whole lot, but if you do one year and two the next, and you build it up, then you're actually compounding what the benefits are of the carbon emission. You know, again, that's the reason why. You know, at first we didn't bring it forward because of a lot of different reasons, as we talked about my meeting. And as we kind of talked through those, you know, I thought the conversation was going more toward the electric. And then it kind of sidetracked when we wanted to have this presentation first. So again, I was just wondering if we need to make a change before it goes to the board. I just want to make sure.
There are cost savings over
Yeah.
maintenance and.
Yep, the gas, you get gas savings and maintenance on it because, you know, and Dan can probably talk a little bit more about this than I can, but ultimately you don't have a whole lot of engine wear and tear on electric. And so you don't have those running parts and things that don't, you know, that are, you'll see in an internal combustion engine. I'm sure Dan could give you a quick stat of how many of our issues with cars are related to the engines and that versus anything else. But you know, ultimately, again, it comes down to the fact that it's, you know, part of the sustainability plan is to move the fleet to, you know, to a renewable energy, whether it's electric, whether it's hybrid, whether it's something in the future, as we all said. It's just, do we want to start? And do we want to start now or do we want to wait? So.
In terms of the parking lot of the rec center, I mean, do you think it looks unsightly at the moment?
No, I'm more worried about the cracking and getting the water in there and the freeze thaw that then leads to more cracking and undermining of the pavement. But, you know, that, again, that's a quote. That's the big issue. And that's making sure that we kind of take care of that.
Do you think that I mean, that was gonna, my next category, or like, is it a safety issue? I mean, are you seeing?
Not right now.
Like,
We did, when we got a quote for it, we worked with an asphalt company and they took a hard look at the parking lot. There's a couple areas, 2 small areas that they suggest that we actually mill and overlay. That's also going to be part of the driveway that gets torn up by MSD when they bring their new pipe through our parking lot. So good news is that will be happening in that time. So, you know, I think we just kind of keep that until MSD comes through 4 to 5 years from now.
oh, so that's not gonna be until,
Yeah.
we'll need to do this before that.
Yep.
Alderman Tice?
So, in that sustainability report, or I don't know if it was Ameren or this, I don't know, I haven't, I'm not on that committee, and I wasn't really ready to talk. Didn't know we were talking about it
I
tonight.
don't have a lot of my stuff with me over there.
So is this a vehicle that was recommended to go electric? Is this one that, and like, what kind of gas costs do you have every year in this kind of vehicle? What are the repair costs? How long? No.
You know, as far as repair costs, it's obviously a little bit different because when you talk about the truck that we're replacing, obviously it's the older truck. It meets our classification, and so it's going to be replacing one of those. When they looked at it, they thought that in Public Works, what made sense to replace were the F-150s, F-250s. They looked at sanitation trucks. There weren't quite the payback on sanitation trucks when you looked at that. But let me try and pull up the page on the actual report. The only bad thing about the report is they kind of lumped all of like the 12 vehicles together, so it's hard to kind of bring out everything. But they basically said, if you replace the 12 trucks, your fuel savings would be about 188,000. So divide that by 12, about 10,000 in fuel saving over the cost of its vehicle or the cost of its lifetime. The maintenance is, they have it pretty low at 23,000. So it's about $1,000, $2,000 in maintenance compared to what we're paying now. So, you know, they show a net savings of about 190,000 between those 12 cars.
And since I'm on the Public Works Committee, are we going to get this study presented to us? And wouldn't it have to be become approved by the Public Works Committee? Because since sustainability kind of reports into the Public Works Committee before we start implementing aspects of this, we haven't seen this report, so.
So the AMR report, obviously, yes, we can, and I can even see if someone from AMR can come. He came to the sustainability. But the sustainability plan does talk about electrifying the fleet, and that was approved by the board. But I'm happy, I can email this report out. For some reason, I thought you guys had already had it, so I apologize that you don't.
I don't recall we have, but
Maybe have, but.
Trust me, we can talk about it.
Might have just come to us, but not around a meeting, so then
Yeah,
there's
it might
less
have been in a
incentive
department
to.
report, and might have been like a sustainability department report where we kind of maybe glossed over it and didn't really talk about it. That would probably be my guess. I am looking real quick. If you look at they have it broken up by trucks. So if you have an F-250, it looks like the lifetime savings is about $11,000 for that vehicle. So that's just what they have in the report. I can definitely bring this back to Public Works. Happy to do that.
I did not have this in my list of items to bring back tonight, which is why it wasn't there. I
Sorry.
thought it was just a general discussion.
That's my fault, Paula. I was trying back to think about any
think
changes
there's-
we had to make for the budget, and I was like, it triggers like, oh wait, we talked about this during my report. And again, we can always have this conversation later after the budget's approved. We can bring back.
I would recommend you leave it as is.
Yes.
And then revisit this
it's
if you
there's
want
too
to
many-
different
too many
direction.
variables to
Too
try
many-
to.
it's-
Understand.
Yeah, trying to make all these decisions during the budget process is really hard, so yes.
Yeah, we can have
I
that
agree.
conversation, and then if we can make the budget amendment there, and if we need to.
Great.
Sorry, Paula. My fault. My fault. All right, I think I'm done then.
All right, next item is a lobbying effort.
Yes, and I'll take that. I hope you've been able to refresh your board docs during this meeting, because as we've heard edits made, to the security for City Hall, I've made changes there. Also, what Eric just talked about, I added that, and the community center crack ceiling and the EV park trucks, and this last item is lobbying efforts, and you will see in your refreshed board docs that number has changed from 60,000 to 41,000. So I went back quickly through board docs, because last year was when the board approved engaging lobbyists, Gamble Schlemeyer Governmental Consultants at a cost of $36,000, and then Palm Strategic Group, where we partnered with Crestwood and other cities. Our cost was about $4,000, total 20, but our cost of that was $4,000. And then for many, many years, I would say at least 10, we have partnered with the cities of Clayton, Maplewood, Richmond Heights to hire a lobbyist named Mark Rhodes, who just does general overview, monitoring of everything going on in Jeff City. He doesn't do any lobbying for us, and that's between $500 and $1,500. So that total is really $41,500. And I was talking to the mayor at the Municipal League meeting that we hosted here in Brentwood, because the topic came up, and I said, are we going to be doing this again? And we know that the issue over food sales tax hasn't gone away, and so who knows what else might be coming up. So it was not included in the budget, but it should be, which is why it's now on this list.
So if we lost the food sales tax, we'd be in such a pickle that we have to spend this money. And I guess the question is, by putting it in the budget, are we approving, presumably these contracts would come to the board for approval? Okay, great. You will, yes, not the, great, thank you.
So is this, the addition of this going to be a subtraction somewhere else, or is this, we're just going to figure out a way to, we're going to add it? Okay. And are we?
General fund. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the city has benefited by actively participating in the process at Jeff City on several of these items. The mayor has done a very good job of that, but sometimes we need outside support. So I think approving it, this money to be in the budget and whether or not it gets spent, you know, that's a game time decision, obviously. So I would make a motion that we add the lobbying effort line item for general fund.
All right, we've got a motion from Alderman Gould and a second from Alderman Erger. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Erger. Motion carries by a vote of 4-0.
Are there any other items that we need to take up regarding the 2025 budget? So I guess at this point, we make a motion to approve the damn thing.
Is that the motion?
No, that's not the motion. That's
Kelly, did you get that?
That's me being after hours. So I would just like to, before we proceed with that, thank everybody for their hard work, for, you know, the presentations, the extra meetings, the review of the materials, the being ready. This is a big lift every year, and I want to commend you all for the excellent job that you did. With that, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the 2025 budget and to move it on to the Maine Board of Aldermen for review and approval.
So moved.
Second?
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Chairwoman Sims.
Yes.
Alderman Gould.
Yes.
Alderwoman Tice.
Yes.
Alderman Erger.
Yes.
All right.
Carries by a vote of 4-0.
Thank you, everybody. We have no new business, and the last item on the agenda is citizen comment. Do we have anyone in the gallery or online that would care to come forward to address the committee? I'm
No
not
one has-
even
no one has their
hearing
hand
crickets.
raised
Oh,
online
someone's got
yet.
their hand raised.
No one has.
Oh,
their
no one has their hand. I'm crestfallen. I misheard you. I did. Like, someone has a comment. All right, then. Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.